Workshop into session. And colleagues, just like we always do, I'll read every item, and if there's anything that you'd want to stop or discuss, then please let me know. And Superintendent, you have staff here, I know, and there may be some junctures where you would like for them to come forward and make some presentations and so forth. So please just let me know when that happens if I don't catch it.
Yes, sir.
Okay? All right. So, of course, the first item of business Monday night will be called to order. Second item will be approval of the agenda. We have no recognitions, no visitors, and we move straight to Section 5, Administrative and Personnel Appointments. 5.1 will be the appointment of the Assistant Principal 2 at Edge Elementary School, recommended by the Superintendent for approval. 5.2 will be the appointment of Assistant Principal 2 at Meigs Middle School, recommended by the Superintendent for approval. And then 5.3 will be the appointment of the Assistant Principal 2 at Walker Elementary School, recommended by the Superintendent for approval. 6.1 will be public comment. Section 7, Committee and Staff Reports. 7.1, in-county travel paid for the period of June 20th through July 3rd, 2019, presented by Mrs. Rita Scallon, Chief Financial Officer. 7.2, out-of-county travel paid for the period of June 20 through July 3rd, 2019, presented by Mrs. Rita Scallon, Chief Financial Officer. 7.3, quarterly report, short-term facility use contracts, lease agreements under the $5,000 threshold, presented by Mr. Vince Wyndham, Program Director, Purchasing. 7.4, quarterly report, service agreements under the $5,000 threshold for internal and budgetary funds, presented by Mr. Vince Wyndham, Program Director, Purchasing. And then 7.5, quarterly report, service agreements for law enforcement, presented by Mr. Vince Wyndham, Program Director, Purchasing. That takes us to consent agenda. 6.1 is approval. 6.2 is approval of the minutes and the regular meeting of July the 8th, 2019, recommended by the Superintendent. 8.3, appropriation of District 5 School Board Member Capital Outlay Funds to Lewis School for 6 outdoor picnic tables in the amount of $2,532, presented by Dr. Diane Kelly and recommended by the Superintendent for approval. 8.4, invoices to be approved for payment, presented by Mrs. Rita Scallon, Chief Financial Officer, and recommended by the Superintendent. 8.5, school donations, presented by Ms. Rita Scallon, Chief Financial Officer, and recommended by the Superintendent. 8.6, payroll warrant register and accounts payable warrant register for June 2019 totaling $55,555,633.96. And bank transfers for June 2019 totaling $29 million, presented by Mrs. Rita Scallon, Chief Financial Officer, and recommended by the Superintendent for approval. 8.7, fiscal year 2019-2020 child care fees, presented by Mrs. Rita Scallon, Chief Financial Officer, and recommended by the Superintendent for approval. 8.8, exempted purchase over $25,000 IXL Learning, presented by Mr. Vince Wyndham, Program Director, Purchasing, and recommended by the Superintendent for approval. 8.9, exempted purchase over $25,000 Curriculum Associates, presented by Mr. Vince Wyndham, Program Director, Purchasing, and recommended by the Superintendent for approval. 8.10, tag on bid ITB 1809375 USDA Commodity Food Processing, presented by Mr. Vince Wyndham, Program Director, Purchasing, and recommended by the Superintendent for approval. 8.11, tag on bid purchase over $25,000 Apple, presented by Mr. Vince Wyndham, Program Director, Purchasing, and recommended by the Superintendent for approval. 8.12, service agreement number 20-41, Christy Woodward, presented by Mr. Vince Wyndham, Program Director, Purchasing, and recommended by the Superintendent for approval. 8.13, service agreement number 20-44, Brent Purcell, presented by Mr. Vince Wyndham, Program Director, Purchasing, and recommended by the Superintendent for approval. 8.14, service agreement number 20-45, Randall Brazelton, presented by Mr. Vince Wyndham, Program Director, Purchasing, and recommended by the Superintendent for approval. 8.15, service agreement number 20-46, William Williams, presented by Mr. Vince Wyndham, Program Director, Purchasing, and recommended by the Superintendent for approval. 8.16, Service Agreement Number 20-47, Edward Peace, presented by Mr. Vince Wyndham, Program Director Purchasing, and recommended by the Superintendent for approval. 8.17, Request to surplus, salvage, and dispose of a portable building, school board-owned tangible property in accordance with Florida statutes 1013.28, paren 2, paren A, and 274.06, presented by Mr. Steve Bolton, Director of Facilities Planning and Maintenance, and recommended by the Superintendent for approval. 8.18, Sale and Disposal of Surplus Property, presented by Mr. Steve Bolton, Director of Facilities Planning and Maintenance, and recommended by the Superintendent for approval. 8.19, 2018-2019 State Equity Report, presented by Mr. Steve Chapman, Equity Specialist, and recommended by the Superintendent for approval. 8.20, School Food Service Updated a la carte Pricing for Elementary and Secondary Schools for 2019-2020 school year, presented by Mr. Stephen Anderson, Program Director, Food Services, and recommended by the Superintendent for approval.
I'd just like to say
Sure.
one thing here. I think that our food service group does such a tremendous job in keeping those prices steady and low. I mean, do you realize we have students who can buy an a la carte item for $0.25? I just think that's miraculous, and I'm really appreciative that having served at schools that were Title I and all various types of schools, I think that's phenomenal.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Dr. Kelly. All right, so moving on to 8.21, State of Florida Voluntary Pre-Kindergarten Education Program Statewide Provider Agreement for fiscal year 2019-2020, presented by Ms. Debbie Hand, Principal Southside Primary School, and recommended by the Superintendent for approval.
And Dr. White, if you don't
Yes, sir.
mind, I would like to say Ms. Hand is out there, so not only is she the principal of Southside and does a great job there, but also helping us just with this overall program as well. So that's something that we very much appreciate, so thank you.
All right, so moving on then to 8.22, Contract Lease Renewal Agreement and Second Amendment to Contract C08-1671-LIB between Okaloosa County and Okaloosa County School Board for Library Cooperative Courier Services, presented by Mr. Eric Mitchell, Director, MIS and Instructional Technology, and recommended by the Superintendent for approval.
Dr. White, I
Sure.
have a comment on this.
Yes, sir.
This particular agreement is a win-win for for both of us, and if I'm not mistaken, that the revenue we get off of this is actually going to help pay for the fuel that we use for our courier services for the year. So,
Correct.
All right, very good, thank you. All right, so moving on to 8.23, Microsoft User Agreement 7678065, presented by Mr. Eric Mitchell, Director, MIS and Instructional Technology, and recommended by the Superintendent for approval. Now, is this the juncture where we call forward Mr. Mitchell, or we want to wait? Mr. Mitchell's saying no, not now. Okay. All right, well, let me know. 8.24, Mental Health Assistance Allocation Plan, presented by Mrs. Terry Schroeder, Program Director, Student Intervention Services, and recommended by the Superintendent for approval.
Well, and I just might say here that, as in several initiatives this year, we're into new territory. And I know that this has been a lot of work and a lot of background and research, looking at templates and things operating in other districts and other places. And I just think we've done a good job there.
Yeah, thank
Stay
you.
fast.
And I agree, Ms. Schroeder's worked hard. She has people with her who are working hard as well. A lot of training on mental health, which has occurred over the course of this summer and will occur going into the school year. But yes, this is a new venture, so to speak, but they're doing an excellent job and appreciate that.
All right, thank you. All right, 8.25, Carl D. Perkins Post-Secondary, Section 132, Entitlement Project Application for 2019-2020, presented by Mr. Jeff Palmer, Director, Curriculum and Instruction, and recommended by the Superintendent for approval. 8.26, Memorandum of Understanding between Career Source Okaloosa Walton and Okaloosa Technical College, presented by Mr. Jeff Palmer, Director of Curriculum and Instruction, and recommended by the Superintendent for approval. 8.27, Okaloosa County School District 2019-2020 Kindergarten Report Card for 2019-2020, presented by Mr. Jeff Palmer, Director of Curriculum and Instruction, and recommended by the Superintendent for approval. 8.28, Agreement between the School Board of Okaloosa County, Crestview High School, and the National Math and Science Initiative College Readiness Program, presented by Stephanie Thedford, Math Specialist, and recommended by the Superintendent for approval. 8.29, agreement between the School Board of Okaloosa County, Fort Walton Beach High School, and the National Math and Science Initiative College Readiness Program, presented by Stephanie Thedford, Math Specialist, and recommended by the Superintendent for approval. 8.30, agreement between the School Board of Okaloosa County, Choctawhatchee High School, and the National Math and Science Initiative College Readiness Program, presented by Stephanie Thedford, Math Specialist, and recommended by the Superintendent for approval. And then 8.31, Crestview High School's request for CTE course adoptions for the 2019-2020 school year, presented by Denise Berry, Specialist, Curriculum and Instruction, and recommended by the Superintendent for approval.
And Dr. White, I would just
Yes, sir.
like to say that I'm excited, not only because it's at Crestview High School, one of the schools I represent, but you look at the courses here, we have health science, directed study, practical nursing foundations, health and wellness. So again, these are some exciting programs that are just enhancing our health professions courses up at Crestview High School. So really excited about these courses and what's heading in the future for our schools throughout the county. So.
Very good. All right, thank you. All right, so moving then to Section 9, Superintendent's Human Resources Recommendations. 9.1, Employees on Administrative Leave, presented by Dr. Lee Hale, Assistant Superintendent, Human Resources. 9.2, Deferred Retirement Option Program, DROP, presented by Dr. Lee Hale, Assistant Superintendent, Human Resources. 9.3, Cleared Certification Requirements and Issuance of Contracts for the 2019-2020 school year, presented by Ms. Karen Peak, Program Director, Professional Services, and recommended by the Superintendent for approval. 9.4, Out-of-Field Report for the 2019-2020 school year, presented by Ms. Karen Peak, Program Director, Professional Services, and recommended by the Superintendent for approval. 9.5, Personnel Recommendations, presented by Dr. Lee Hale, Assistant Superintendent, Human Resources, and recommended by the Superintendent for approval. 9.6, Employment Separations, presented by Dr. Lee Hale, Assistant Superintendent, Human Resources, and recommended by the Superintendent for approval. 9.7, Reinstatement Reimbursement of Sick Leave due to Line of Duty Illness, Injury, Medical Examination, presented by Dr. Lee Hale, Assistant Superintendent, Human Resources, and recommended by the Superintendent for approval. And then 9.8, Leave Without Pay, presented by Dr. Lee Hale, Assistant Superintendent, Human Resources, and recommended by the Superintendent for approval. That takes us to Section 10, Discussion Agenda, and at this time, there are no items that are moved there. Section 11, Construction Program Owners Representatives Business. This would be a program status report by the board's representative to the construction program, and of course, that would be Mr. Destin, sir.
Thank you, Chairman. And I'm happy to report that there is construction going on at Forosa. And we have a number of other projects that we discussed and are looking into, some roof leaks, and of course, all the security measures that are all underway to fruition soon, I hope.
Yes, sir. Very good. Well, thank you, Mr. Destin. All right, so moving on to Section 12, Information Technology and Seat Management. 12.1, CACI Task Order Number 2-137, Revision 2, Change Order 1, OCSD AI Phone Video Intercom System, presented by Mr. Dustin Key, Specialist, Seat Management, and recommended by the Superintendent for approval. 12.2, CACI Task Order Number 2-142, OCSD Mail Meter Archive to Cloud Migration, presented by Mr. Dustin Key, Specialist, Seat Management, and recommended by the Superintendent for approval. Mr. Mitchell, I see that you've approached
I can do it
area?
now, I can do it at the next item, but to be honest with you, they both kind of go together, so.
Okay, well,
I'm ready when y'all are.
let's go ahead and leave it up to the superintendent. What's your choice?
Mr. Mitchell is already up there in his purple, so let's do it.
All right, Eric, you're on.
Okey dokey. Board members, today this has been a project in the making for quite some time, and as we originally discussed, I believe this is us taking another step into the inevitable when it comes to technology. We're going to talk about
All right.
today the cloud migration.
So colleagues, we have a PowerPoint that the folks are seeing behind us. Ours is in front here on the TV there.
So just going to go over a few things today. We're going to talk about the goals, what's going to happen as far as the project and what's going to move forward, timelines, that kind of stuff, and then I'll wrap it all up at the end. Currently, there's 118 physical servers that support the district. That's 118 giant rectangular server boxes throughout the district that take care of everything from file storage to the distribution of critical function applications throughout the district. So they're all across the board. And to be honest with you, it's time to start thinking about a better way to do things. We've had some challenges going to the cloud in the past. The contractual agreements that we've had in place, network bandwidth, some implementation issues that we've had to deal with, but most of those things over time have either wrapped up and finished, or technology's caught up, or all the different pieces to make this a great time to start this project. We're going to take as much of the existing server infrastructure as we can and move it to the cloud. It's very simple when we talk about it in terms of just data storage. A lot of servers are strictly data storage. Most of the servers at schools are data storage, teacher files. That's what most of it does. It's the application servers that are located at the district level. Those are a little more tricky, but a lot of this is just moving data to the cloud. We're going to take advantage of the cloud storage that's provided from Microsoft. We're going to reduce the physical hardware cost. We're going to minimize impact to staff in the transition. And we're going to modernize the operating equipment. We've gone through this. I have to tell you that we've been meeting now almost weekly on this project for quite some time, getting all the ducks in a row for today. And then those meetings continue as we move forward, starting at our next one is actually Monday, so we start looking at some of the training aspects that'll be happening as a result of how we migrate and move, just getting ready for everything that's coming.
So just quickly before we move on, as I look at your project objectives there, so we're going to be using Microsoft
That is correct.
to store our things, our stuff.
That's right.
All right. And we anticipate that by doing that we can reduce cost.
Yes, sir.
So we're looking at cost savings.
That's correct.
All right. And then minimize impact to staff. We're talking about, I assume we're talking about training.
Yes, sir.
All right. All right.
And we'll get into those pieces as we go through this presentation.
And then modernize the operating environment. I guess that means because we're going to the cloud.
That's right.
That's more modern.
Well, when you think about things now, everything is based on the mobile device. I mean,
Okay.
sure.
All right.
We have our laptops. There are things we do on our laptops. We get our business done on our laptops. But how many times are we pulling out a device like a phone, especially if we're going from one place to the other? I need to check an email. I need to do this. Well, you've been on the cloud the whole time.
Okay.
So it's a lot of folks now are using their phone as a primary device. And so we're looking at making changes and things that will allow folks who want to continue to do that to be as easy as possible.
So rather than having my memo or my email stored on my computer, now it's going to be stored up
In
in
the cloud.
the sky.
Mhm.
Okay, I get it. Okay, thank you.
They're on servers. They're just not servers on-prem.
All right.
Okay? Yes. Sure.
And I always like to try to bring this back to a teacher level. So, and the board members probably knows, but for the past 2 or 3 years, we have been storing, teachers have been storing in the cloud because every teacher has had a Google Drive with 10 terabytes of data available to
Okay.
it. So as part of our ClassLink process, teachers have had options to be able to store their document on a server
Okay.
off-site and during which time they could then go home and access that file as well. Or, as we've done and we really are moving away from, is storing that file right on your desktop on the storage that's there. And so that's probably the most antiquated way of doing it, is to storing it in one device. Then if you go to another room and you want to pull up that file, you can't do it because it's on
Right.
that device. So it's continuing a transition that's already started organically over the last 3 years.
And you said Google. Now, and my little bit of research indicated to me that Google actually is a competitor in this particular endeavor. And will these teachers still be able to access their Google files?
Yes, sir. We already have some locations that are already heavy into the Google Classroom platform. None of that has to change. They can
Okay.
continue to do that as they wish.
Okay.
Another thing about what Steve is saying, if you think about it, you're storing stuff to the laptop. That's what a lot of folks are doing it now. So when it's time for refresh and it's time for your other laptop, everything has to be transferred over. In this new system and the way things will work, if my laptop has a problem at 8 o'clock in the morning, I get another machine at 8:15, I'm logged into it and everything's like it was. I don't even know there was a change, because it's all pulling from those data cloud storage places instead of the machine itself.
Well, now that you mentioned it, will Chromebooks still work as they've worked?
Absolutely. All this still fits in the Chromebook
Okay,
environment.
very good.
So the transition period, year one, we've got 22 eligible servers. One of the biggest questions is why is this taking 3 years? Well, every server has a contractual agreement toward it, a lease agreement that we have in place. Some of those are less than a year old, so they have a 3-year commitment. Some of them are ending this year, and so those will be the first ones we go for. So if you're asking me what's the order of when a school gets to go, or when we transition a particular school, it all depends on when their servers are due for refresh.
Okay.
So we have at least 17 servers that we know will have to stay, that there's nothing we can do to try to migrate the cloud. Those will have to remain in function at the moment. There's no way to transition them to a cloud-based service. AS100 is a good example of that. This is just kind of a timeline overview of how we'll be rotating services. So you can see services and hardware, they're kind of equal right now. As we go toward the end, the hardware is a much smaller part of the pie. The services are a much larger part of the pie. This is due to the fact that, quite frankly, when you come to me, you don't just need a computer. You need a computer, but I also need phone access, or I need tablet access, or I need to be able to do all those different devices. The actual device you use is becoming less important and more important for you to have access on what you need to have access with. The pricing model, currently 118 eligible servers. The total estimated servers to transition is about 103, which is 25 terabytes of data. That's a significant transfer. Total estimated remaining physical servers, 15. We say plus or minus here because as we go through the process of some of the servers that aren't ready for refresh yet, but say years 2 or 3, we start looking at some of the applications that they're running. It may be that going to the cloud is not the best solution for them, so we may have a few that we also retain. So it's not. I'm not going to say that exactly 15. We don't know that yet. So the current annual price for servers, you see that there. That takes care of approximately that 3,400 users. So we'll switch to a user-based fee. So the user-based fee will take over, which will change. There'll be a new annual price for Exchange and an annual price for the A3 license. So we're paying a lot more for servers and hardware than we will be for the software and the license that take its place. This will lead to reduced seat pricing because of the change in how we do the A3 agreement. The seat prices will have to change. They'll be adjusted just to remove the Microsoft cost and change it to how we're doing it now. So that's just it's about a $1.56 a month. This is the projected annual savings. Year 1 and 2 is way small. By the time we're not refreshing servers at all, it jumps up way a lot bigger than it is now. So this is currently based on it now. This is projected, and these are estimates. And I have to be clear about that because as we go to a migration of cloud-based services, your need for servers disappears. Your need for bandwidth increases. So we will have bandwidth increases as a result of this. We do not think those will be significant in cost at all. But we just, I can't give you exact numbers today because until we get actual pieces, companies will tell you, you're going to need this much bandwidth. We know from experience that's a low estimation, and we're probably going to need a little bit more than that. So once we get our feet underground, that's another great reason for doing this over 3 years. We get the first schools done, get their bandwidths nice and adjusted, and then I have a much better handle on the other locations as we roll through. Here's some of the enhancements to the program. It increases security. When it comes down to the documents, just to give you a great example, right now, every document that's out there I'm dependent on knowing when a document was copied to a machine, removed from a machine, edited on a machine. The new way files will be stored. Everything will be logged. So I'll know which user moved when, which user did the download at this time, when the file was last modified, and users will actually be able to see that. One of the things that a user will be able to do from this new system is if they have a previous version of a document they'd like to revert back to, doing that actually becomes a lot easier. And in the log system, we see the original document, we see the new document, and we see that they reverted back. So all of that is some stuff that's apparent that we can see and track now that we couldn't do before. Opportunities for additional cost savings, document storage. That's for folks who are currently trying to buy document storage other places, people who have whatever they've tried to come up with to find additional storage. They won't need that anymore. Terabits. I mean, the offer from Microsoft for the free storage space is incredible. Single sign-on solutions. Some of our solutions are cheaper if we go to their cloud-based deployment model. Some of them are not cheaper, but most of them that we've seen actually come out with a better price for them to deploy it than for us to bring it down locally and do it on our own server. So that's another win there. And you'll see those as we go through. And then the web solutions, with everything being web-based or online, the ability for a teacher to get to anything they want anytime is a much better reality than it currently is. That'll be a lot of what our training is about with teachers, showing them, oh, by the way, you can go here and get this, and you can do it from anywhere, those kind of pieces. The NIST-based security protection for OneDrive and shared data. So like we're talking about, you get the classification, the tracking, we get the advanced threat analytics from this document. So we'll be able to start seeing some of these threats as they come in and be able to recognize them a lot faster. So here comes somebody trying to steal people's passwords, usernames. We'll actually have a much greater ability to see who's been targeted, why they've been targeted, and get those targets to go away. Then we got the Microsoft Identity Management implementation, which includes the automated account and group management. So everything comes from the AS400. We used to be where you'd have to create a new account, new person, everything comes in. Now everything gets synced. So when a new person is hired, here comes the account creation, everything starts following. So the process of bringing in a new employee and getting them into the system, once they're in AS400 now, things go a lot faster. The system is designed to handle that and it's designed to do that in a much faster way. And of course, we're going to start this in the fall. The bandwidth requirements, existing bandwidths meets the current cloud requirements. We have a real good, we believe we're very close to needing exactly what we need already. So it just depends, different projects, different changes. Something we have been doing server-based goes online. We see a new bandwidth increase, we'll have some changes for that. The bid for internet, that usually comes about every September, October. The newest one will reflect these changes. Let's see here. Training for users on the new technology. So when we first knew that this was coming, we pulled the technology trainer and the instructional technology department. We pulled them in and got them involved right away. They've already had their initial trainings with Microsoft. Microsoft is giving us all kinds of training opportunities at no cost for this, and they've been sending people, and they're going to continue to send people. One of the things we've already got planned is a Microsoft integrated training for us, the Train the Trainer team, that'll be going out to the schools to make sure schools that's got a handle on how this transition works. Some additional potential costs. Sometimes, like I said, going to the cloud with a vendor is cheaper. Sometimes it's not. We'll have to weigh those when those come across. That may make a decision as to whether or not like I said, we had 15 plus or minus servers. It may be 16 if we find that having one on site is actually a better alternative than going cloud-based. Metered services such as storage types. So if I'm buying something from a company, I'm trying to think of a good example of this. What would have been an example of this would have been if I was like Apple. Apple sells storage for users, and the first 500 megs is free. And then the next step of storage is 99 cents a month. Then the next above that is $2.99 a month. Okay, so if we as a district go into applications that have requirements like that, then obviously costs will have to be metered, and that's based on usage. We don't foresee a lot of that. Most of that would have to come through us for clearance anyway, and that's not something we like to do, but it's just to give you the warning that that's a potential. So that's kind of how that goes. Updated projects. So this is the timelines that we're proposing. As you see, it goes all the way out to 2022. So we're hoping that after the board meeting Monday that to begin this process. We've got different steps and phases that go along the way. One of our first meetings, of course, is the training piece, but then we've got over a dozen school servers that have to be touched this year. So our first step will be going to them. So most of the school stuff is just changing where they store the file. But again, much more cost effective than doing it on site.
Well, Eric, I have a question about that.
Mhm.
So teachers, for
Mhm.
example, will they have a choice regarding saving their file to a local hard drive or on their computer, or will they be required to save it in the cloud?
This, right now, to answer your question, is yes. Right now, the idea is what's part of the training package. We expect part of the training package to be an example of here's where it is. If you need to put it somewhere else, here's where you put it.
Okay.
What they won't realize is that's duplicated anyway.
Okay.
But we're going to give them that option to be able to
Good.
do that, because we do have folks who
Sure.
live in places where they don't have connectivity.
Well, particularly if for some
Mhm.
reason the internet went down.
Or, some outdoor activity,
Right.
those kind of things. No, we understand that completely. I won't say that in the future, as we go through and do this,
Right.
we won't reevaluate that year
Right.
after year to say, you know what, no one's doing this.
Yep.
Let's
Well,
go ahead and make
right.
it so it's more seamless, and we may do things like that as we go through. But the initial is to allow for that.
Okay.
We'd have to with this kind of transition.
Dr. Kelly?
I do. I have a question, Eric,
Mhm.
and this may be a conversation for another time, but something you said sparked the memory of our discussion several years back about the potential for digital libraries and digital classroom libraries. And I think the number one deterrent from that at the time was that security issue, that students could get perhaps to collections of books that were more adult than for their level in school. So would there be a way perhaps in this then that classroom teachers and or media centers could look at digital libraries with a security measure in place that they would just have access to a certain collection? Maybe help teachers in the classroom with that.
I can tell you,
Cost of
based
purchasing.
on our discussion here, that our process right here doesn't really connect to what you're asking in that particular regard, but.
So maybe a
but
discussion
what-
later down the road.
But what you're talking about requires us to have an application in place that allows us to say, this collection is for this
Segment.
folks in
Right.
the creating of user accounts. So this user can have access to this, so that's just a matter of what we're looking for there.
Okay.
This in particular program won't necessarily connect to that. Now, we do have authorities that are set aside in this project.
Sure.
As a principal, I can see on my school, that kind of stuff.
Right.
But at that level, this doesn't tie into that yet.
Yet, okay.
Before I go any further here, I want to take an opportunity to thank some folks that are here today. Teleforce is here today. We've got Tom Fife, Maurice Summerlin, y'all know Dustin, and then Les Rose. And they have been an intricate part of all of this. They've been helping us. We've been meeting with their teams, and they truly have the the technology evolution of the district in their heart. When we talk about projects, it is a partnership, and it's a wonderful partnership, and we enjoy working with them thoroughly. Do you guys want to say anything or add anything today? Okay. All right.
Want to answer any questions?
So, so this is a measured approach to cloud migration. It will take multiple years to get the whole project done. The transition is scalable, so we'll be doing this as we get more and more in place. We'll be able to do more and more moving forward. We've already started that joint working group, and they've been producing documents. We bring in different people as they're needed. So the bulk of those meetings are myself and Dustin and Teleforce. The next wave is the IT, the instructional technology folks. Then we've also got the meetings after that, which include the AS400 folks for the data transfers and the migrations and those kind of things. So we have all that working through. And you see the rest. Minimal budget impacts, we're reinvesting. Improved technical efficiencies and cost savings beginning year one, and has the potential for future savings.
All right, colleagues, any questions about this ubiquitous computing era that we're moving into? Mr. Bryant?
No, go ahead, Mr.
I was going to let Ms. Finch
Okay,
go
I
first.
just want to
Okay.
say that probably the best compliment I could give you and your team is that I got most of that, so that's good.
Thank you.
The other thing, of course, and I think you mentioned it again, this is pretty much for the employee, a seamless process, right?
Mhm.
There won't be a lot of, and that's great, because I know as a former teacher, classroom teacher, when the new tech is like, what do we have to do now? But again, thank you and your team for all of this. It's very well organized and certainly moving us forward in that area that I think we're ahead now. I feel like moving with this.
But to add to one thing that I did not mention, we've been talking about employees and the impact there, but the student side of this is almost negligible because they've already been doing this. When we went
Yeah.
to individual students' accounts, they got Microsoft 365 accounts when we started working on that project. And between the ones who are doing that and the ones where the teacher was already active in Google Classroom, this to them is second nature.
Right, thank you.
Okay. Mr. Bryant?
So I actually had the pleasure of sitting in your office the other day, just because my office is right down the hall from yours, and I was in there because of my password. We have 1 million passwords like everybody else, and this led to the discussion of what we're doing today. But passwords, can you talk about that a little bit, what you told me?
Well, passwords right now are just like they are. They've been set up. They'll continue to function as they will, but some things that we're looking forward to moving is some of the other districts. Matter of fact, I've been talking with several other districts. Is now a lot of you, when you see your different online applications, you see what's called two-factor authentication, where you're not necessarily having to change a password anymore, but you got to have another device to say, hey, you are who you say you are. And so those are some things that we're going to be looking towards to the future, so that teachers don't have to change passwords, but every once in a while they might have to go, oh, I need to know this code, and I have to have the other device. And it's actually a much safer way of doing security for the network. But again, we're going to have to move into that as we go forward. It will not be something you'll see right away, but something for the future.
Thank you, Mr. Bryant. And you just said something that that you and I discussed, in that are other districts already doing this with Microsoft?
Yes, sir. Matter of fact, when Microsoft and Google first started offering classroom accounts, it was almost a little over 5 years ago. We looked at it then, but decided maybe still a tad earlier than we want to do. And we weren't 100% sure then we were ready for student accounts, because it's one thing to take care of 3,400 district users. It's another thing to take on, 30,000 student users. Or the first thing that jumps in your head is, I've got to get a kindergartner on email. But, some of them already are and are doing quite well. I mean, I'm just saying, in a lot of ways, students are ahead of us. And so, and that's a large part of what we do, is trying to stay ahead of them. That it is absolutely true. There have been a lot of districts that have already switched to this because of the fact that the savings is there for the hardware costs. Now, that moves into the email piece, which isn't necessarily part of the discussion, but ties in with this. As a part of this cloud migration and move, we'll be going ahead and moving from the servers that maintain Exchange to the cloud-based version of email. To the end user, they won't notice a difference. They'll still have Outlook on their laptops. They'll still be able to access their emails on their machines just like they always have. But instead of those emails being stored at the district level, they will be stored at Microsoft. The process to that is an 18-month process. It doesn't have to be 18 months, but we needed to make it 18 months for a couple of reasons that are all wrapped around security. But one of the big transfers that will happen in this is not so much the emails. The moving of your email from the server to the cloud, while more than just a few clicks, is simple in comparison to the transition of the stored emails and the system we use called M-Files, which, as you all know, we're required to keep emails for a certain time frame to be able to produce for public records. That transition of emails is what's making this process slower. But it's what has to be done. The transition from the program is not simple, and it does require a lot of intricate work. So to do that, we went ahead and put in a third party that not only specializes in doing these transitions, but as a third party acts to make sure files are transferred without the involvement of the district, to ensure that everything is transferred smoothly. So the district can't come back and say, I didn't move these files for a reason. We aren't connected to the transfer of the files because we're just going to say, transfer them all, and then we shall move them all. That process takes the contract with our current company that provides it is actually up in February, but I did not want to see us rush that project because I didn't think a transition by February was accurate, so I went ahead and asked to go ahead and make this an 18-month project so that I could move that and give myself that whole year to make sure all the files are transferred and that we're happy before we cut ties with the company. That data is too critical and too legally obligated as a district for us to maintain, for us to do that in a short time and mess it up. We have to make sure we have all that transferred and done correctly.
Any questions about that, colleague?
And that's been my primary concern, and I have been talking to Eric about it, is we have special obligations as a governmental entity for the storage of public records. Eric, do we have any idea how many districts? I mean, a lot of districts could be 7. How many districts are moving to the cloud?
I don't have an exact count, but the last few times that I've met, most of the folks that I talked to are already there. I'd have to go and get you an exact count. I don't know,
Well,
but,
and
but
that
I,
may
the
not
ones
be
I talked to
possible.
are the Panhandle group, but yes.
That may not be possible, and I fully support modernizing the system. It just makes me a little bit uneasy. I've had some personal experiences with Google security that is pretty sorely lacking.
Well, and let me change it. Maybe this may help what you're talking about. Keep in mind that all of those emails from the mail meter system are on a server. So they're on hard drives on a server. So when all this transition is done, even though we may not still contract with a company, we still retain that server
Okay.
and all those hard drives.
You're going to have an archive.
We'll have an archive. We'll
All right.
actually have
Now-
a secondary
Now that's
system.
from now into the past. What about from now forward? And because we have a continuing obligation for the document to be securely,
We have-
retained. So what happens once we've made the transition? If there's some problem, have we lost our documents that the law obliges us to not lose? And who do we blame if that happens?
Well, we have complete control over those documents in the Microsoft system.
Okay.
Right now, that is, any error that would happen would be under Microsoft, but all of the way they do these documents and file storages is done in a redundant way, so that even though the way kind of a description of how the cloud works, you have stuff stored here, stored here, stored here. Anything happens to any of the one, two, the other takes care of it. So there's
Okay.
always,
We
think
have
of it as like
backup.
always being in triplicate.
Okay.
So the idea of the only thing that would cause that kind of damage would be a catastrophic event that would cause something to cause us to lose data. So it's not it's in somebody's server sitting in where's Microsoft at?
Redmond.
Redmond. It's not there. It is served throughout their cloud storage system and their redundancy cycle, so we don't expect that to be an issue.
Well, my wife says I'm dangerous when I start researching on my own. But what I've tried to find out is the cloud, there are some big servers somewhere.
Mhm.
It's not just a cloud. And the servers that I've been able to ascertain are not even in this country that Microsoft and the other people use. Makes me a little nervous, but if you say we have a backup, then that will allay that fear.
The way the Microsoft system is laid out and built, there's redundancy, there's backups in the system. We are not concerned about a data loss after we transition to Microsoft.
Okay. That's a question I will want to feel good about. Thanks.
Anything else, colleagues? Good. All right, Mr. Mitchell, thank you, sir. Good job. All right, so then moving on to 12.13, CACI IT Seat Management Outsourcing Agreement, Contract Modification Agreement, Change Order 12, presented by Mr. Eric Mitchell, Director, MIS and Instructional Technology, and recommended by the Superintendent for approval. All right, Mr. Attorney, your business, sir.
No report this morning.
Thank you, sir. Superintendent, you have your customary out-of-state field trips, and you may have some other items.
Yes, sir, and you all have to bear with me this morning, so I do have a few things.
Okay?
So I do want to say, so we've had a number of meetings with principals over the course of this summer. One of the questions that we posed to them was in a two-prong approach. So it was, what is the vision of our school district, or what are we all about? Okay? And as you can imagine, as we went around that discussion, there were a number of great answers that were given. And if we ask that question right now, probably up here, we might all also give 5, 6, 7 different answers. Okay? So one of the things that we talked about with our principals is a statement. And we talked about everyone is important or no one is important. And we talked about what does that mean to you as a principal. But what does that mean from the secretary's perspective? What does that mean from the bus driver's perspective? What does that mean from the classroom assistant's perspective? So you'll see as we go into the school year, that is something something I'll say that we're galvanizing around. You know, everyone is important or no one is important in what we do for our students, what we do for our employees. So wanted to give you that information. That's something that you'll see more and more. I also want to say, so this next week, next Thursday, we have what's going to be called the admin retreat. And some of you have been to the admin retreat as principals. And we like to joke about it, and we say the admin retreat is a kind of code name for a long principal meeting. So this year, we're kind of excited. We're doing some creative things. So Ms. Lightbourne has led up the admin retreat, so she has a great agenda planned for us. If you want to stop by that day, well, feel free to do so, and Ms. Lightbourne will get you out that information. So that'll be a action-packed day, an exciting day, and it'll be a little bit different from what we've done in the past. So kind of excited about that. There are a number of items on the school board agenda that sometimes we kind of go through. So as you know, state assessment data has come back and we've done well. But I do want to say there are a number of items on here. There's something that's called IXL and iReady. And these are some of the programs that we use at the schools, that our teachers use, that are supplemental as one extra resource for them. And then some of the ladies who are here in the seats here do a great job of working with our teachers and getting those types of programs implemented and doing well. So those are just a couple of items. I know the state equity report that was on there. I know Mr. Chapman, I know he was eager to come up and present this morning.
Well, I didn't see anybody move forward.
He did a good job on it.
Absolutely. But as you know, a lot of hard work goes into compiling all of that and making sure that we're doing what we need to do. So I do thank you, Mr. Chapman, for that hard work. The kindergarten report card is another item that's on there that Mr. Palmer loves going through this process. But it is a process that we go through each year. Teachers are a part of this process, so a lot of hard work goes into that. And then the last thing I want to say, just on the agenda, there's 3 items on there, and there's a program, just to be very simplistic, it's called NIMSY, and we're trying to put an even stronger focus on AP, our advanced placement courses. So I do thank Ms. Thedford for the work that you're doing there. As you know, Dr. Willis Doxey is with us now, and she has hit the ground running, and that's something that I appreciate as well. But from training, already in a couple weeks, already is the training aspect for our ESE teachers and our ESE aides that is starting to come together now, which I'm excited about. Staffing and some of the positions that were approved already, we're starting to get those positions hired, and that is critical. But also, she's looking at behaviors, in some of our units. So working on that, especially the EBD program, you'll see some changes as we go into this year and some tiered systems of behavior support for those programs. Also, she's been working on positive behavior support. It was a recommendation from the state that we look at this, and some of our schools will be in it. So she just went through training again, even though she was already a trainer. So appreciate that as well. The state testing data. Mr. Horton and Ms. Lightbourne on Monday are going to give a more detailed report, but I do just want to briefly say, as you know, I think we're one of only 3 schools in the school districts in the state to achieve an A every year since the more rigorous assessments were developed. So we're one of 3. We had 7 schools improve a letter grade this year. We had 25 A's, which is about 69% of our schools were A's. We had 10 B's this year. 97% of our schools were an A or a B. And then this year, we had 1 C school, and that C school is definitely working hard. The previous year, we had 3 C schools. So we've improved that as well. And that is, as we've talked about already, that's due to the hard work of our teachers and staff, our principals working hard. But I would also like to say, just within the curriculum department, there's a number of individuals who work extremely hard to support our teachers. And as you know, it takes an entire school district to do the things that we do, and that encompasses all the departments. But as you know, the lion's share is the teachers and the staff that's right there working with those students. If you don't mind, I would like Mr. Horton to come up and give an update on the Choctaw Stadium. And as he is coming up, one thing I think you'd be proud of is you have Fort Walton Beach High School, Mr. Spolsky, and you have Niceville High School, Mr. Morello, who have reached out to Mrs. Heck, and they've made every offer for anything that that Ms. Heck needs to include their fields. So, Mr. Horton.
Very good.
Yes, that is a great testimony to the teamwork in the district. Although I will say Ms. Heck absolutely wants to play her games at Choctaw.
Imagine that.
So board members, we are in a process right now of having engineers evaluate the Choctaw Stadium in terms of any remediation that needs to occur. Ms. Heck has made that area off limits. You might remember, board members who were here, there were some remediations that took place a couple of years ago under a bid. But at this point in time, we have a group of engineers who have visited the school once with our own folks up on the lift, and then again, I think are sending another team back. We expect to have some specs and plans for remediation by the 26th or 27th of July. So our timeline is critical here. We likely would work down the route of an emergency bid to get some work begun on that facility sooner. We're working directly with Miss Heck, and they've got a kickoff classic that occurs at the beginning of school that they're making arrangements for. Their next home game is September 6th. And so obviously, as Mr. Chambers has said, the other high schools have reached out and offered to coordinate when they have an away game that could potentially be a solution. But we're not abandoning Choctaw and the Memorial Stadium there. We're just not sure of the timeline yet for repairs. And so the early indication is that potentially the visitor side and potentially the ends of the home side may be able to be remediated sooner. And so if that's the case, and again, working with Ms. Heck, she's developing plans with her athletic director and staff to make some decisions about what they wanting to host. The other piece is the press box is actually separately supported from the large bleacher section. So when we get the engineering results back and the remediation piece, there could be any number of things that come out of that. At the end of it all, we want to make sure we have a sign-off that attests to the safety of that facility before
Right.
we allow any folks on it.
Right.
We do have portable bleachers in the district, and so obviously Pryor is a school that uses that facility as well on Thursdays in the fall. So we're making sure we're touching base with Ms. Barron so that all the schools that are involved understand kind of where we are. And I don't have a timeline to give you other than the fact that we believe we'll get some information to do an emergency bid at the end of the month.
Mr. Horton, I just want to interject something that we've spoken about, and I think colleagues, this is more testifying to the fact that we have aged facilities, and I can tell you at Meigs Middle School we lived through this exact same scenario with an aged facility, in which all the bleachers on both sides had to be completely replaced because they were old and they deteriorate. And so it's the kind of thing that unfortunately now we're facing at Choctawhatchee, and I'll take it a step further. I followed with great interest the complete demolition and rebuilding of Tommy Oliver Stadium in Bay County. And it's just a reality of what happens with these old and aged facilities. So I certainly appreciate the good work that you folks are doing. I'm hoping that there can be some remediation projects that can effectively allow the school to participate there at their home field. But I understand, in the case of Meigs, for example, that might not be possible. Anything else, sir?
Not at this time, but we will keep you updated when we get information.
I have
Anything?
a
Yes, sir.
question, Chairman. Which engineering firm is doing the analysis?
Schmidt Consulting.
And how did we get them? I mean,
They are
were they
the
involved earlier?
They are the firm that did the inspection.
They do our every 2-year inspection.
And were they involved in the repairs 2 years ago?
There was a bid that came before the board to do repair work 2 years ago based on the engineering report. So, Steve, you might come speak to that specifically.
Well,
So we
let me interject now. Come forward, Mr. Bolton. It may not have even been in the same area. This might be, and please speak to this, this might be a new area. I'm not sure.
It is a new problem, but a result of the similar things happening.
Yep.
The Gulf air is attacking the concrete and deteriorating it over time. But like 2 years ago, if you recall, the visitor side.
I was there.
Yes, sir. So that was the primary focus,
Right.
but we did also, with this same engineering firm's inspection and specifications that they laid out, that was put together, and the bid was done based on their plans and
Right.
specifications.
But now we're looking at the home side.
Yes, sir.
Right.
We do have a couple of issues on the visitor side, too.
Oh, sure,
So
sure.
we do have both sides that have to be,
Does that answer your help?
Well,
Mr.
and sometimes when you have an illness and you get an opinion from a doctor, you get a second opinion. So I'm not sure if I'm hearing there's a desire perhaps to get a second opinion about the
That's exactly where I
remediation
was
work.
going with that.
Yes, sir.
It's always better and good to get a second opinion.
Okay, and then at the board's direction, we can do that, and absolutely, that has the potential to change the timeline somewhat, but that is absolutely necessary in this case.
And I think we have a contract with our Jacob Titan group who have engineers, and you would think the simple solution would be to have their engineers look and verify what we think is the problem.
Very good. Yes, sir.
And I'm just wondering if this might be an area, Mr. Destin, that could be part of your
Exactly
committee?
where I was going with that,
All right.
to see what we can find by using the people we already have under contract.
Okay. And so that would fall under Section 11, Construction Program Owners Representatives Business?
It would.
Okay. And do we need a motion to that effect, Mr. McInnes, or just by deference?
Well, we can't make a motion today because
That's
of the
right.
Well, that's
workshop,
right.
But I think
But
that
Monday night?
Mr. Destin can work with that group. The part of the contract we have with them is a a time and materials option versus just a GMP, so they may be able to get some professional services under that option.
All right. So then I'm hoping that you
Yeah,
folks can
we'll
discuss and
it.
work that out.
We'll figure it out.
And if we need to Monday night, let's
Yes.
bring something forward.
You know, I'm not the attorney, but I would think there are, and I've read the contract several times, and there are provisions in there that allow for emergency situations such as this.
Okay?
So, you know, I think it's already addressed.
Okay, very good. All right, thank you for the update, Mr. Horton.
Yes, sir.
I've had some inquiries from the public, as you might imagine, the colleagues you may have or you will. Okay?
And just as an update to that too, of course, Ms. Heck is, you know, they have season ticket holders. And so they've not begun to sell season tickets
Okay.
without having an official plan of what's going on, but that's a big
Okay.
consideration. You know, including the restrooms in the facility, so that where they're located under the home side and the visitor side. So any process would have to include making sure that those were safe to be used as well. So there's a lot going on, and it's unfortunate, but to your point, it's an aging facility in that stadium that will need some attention.
So can I just
Sure.
clarify this? We've talked a couple things. So bottom line, you're going to have another group look at it, or the Titan group look at it and do their evaluation, right? Just like you've already had
Yes, ma'am,
it.
that's what I've heard
Okay,
today.
and then-
Either the report that comes from this engineering group, we're going to have Jacobs Titan look at it
Yeah.
to review and/or validate.
Okay. And from that,
Wh-
decide.
Which would mean, excuse me, I'm sorry.
Status.
Yes, ma'am, which would mean they probably need to be on site as well to take a look at, with their own eyes.
And so first thing is the safety. Is it usable, or can we do something to get it usable pretty quickly? And then we need to look at the big picture, because I'm assuming getting it usable may not still be the, right?
Permanent,
The
right.
permanent answer to,
Right.
since we've already had a problem a couple years ago with the side, and obviously, like Dr. White is saying, bottom line, the facility is aging, probably getting to a point where we have to look at the big picture.
I think you can look to repair something for so long,
Oh,
and
that's
then
right.
you probably run out of reasonable repairs without really expending a lot of funds. So I think your point is on.
Okay, all right.
you're on
And
point
that's
there.
all complicated by the fact that, and Ms. Scallon, I see her over here casting eyes at me, complicated by the fact that basically, we're broke. I mean, we're not loaded with a lot of
That's right.
funding.
And the public needs to hear this.
Yeah, and in Bay County, of course, they had a half-cent sales tax. And
Yep.
they were able to fund their operations, and we don't have that.
That's right, and that's what I'm saying, the public needs to hear this, I hope they're watching. Maybe
Yes, ma'am.
football will get their attention, the lack of it, or
Good.
change in it. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Horton.
And the
All right.
last things
Yes,
I'd
sir.
say on that is I do want the board to know, as you can imagine, Ms. Heck, when she found this out, knowing that the season is fast approaching and what that means, and as you know, that impacts a lot. I'll just say that. But she's been so professional, so attentive. She's done everything that she needs to do. She's worked really well with Mr. Horton and his team, but she has done a fantastic job. And then Dr. White, and it's already been alluded to in terms of the aging facilities, that this is just one example of aging facilities in our school district. And we have one of the best school districts in the state of Florida with some of the oldest facilities.
Exactly.
And the last update that I'd like to give, if you don't mind, would be on, this is hiring season, and you all usually want to know kind of where we are, instructional and ed support. So if we'd have Dr. Hale come up and kind of give us that summary.
Happy to. Good morning, everyone. Chairman, Board, Mr. Chambers, good to see everyone. Very busy time over there in the HR division. The numbers that I have for you today are as of Tuesday afternoon, which is the last time that I collected those, so I'm sure there was some work done yesterday in the hiring area as well. But as of Tuesday, across the district, we had 176 new instructional faces. That's made up of 129 new hires and 47 transfers. So 176 new instructors have been placed already this summer. In the ed support area, 60 new faces, which is 17 new hires and 43 transfers from one place to another for one reason or another. But 62 instructional vacancies remain and 68 ed support vacancies remain, so there's still work to be done. And all of these numbers also represent some step in the hiring process, from the principal pressing the button all the way through the final action over there in HR. But those are just the raw numbers for you to kind of wrap your brain around. And it's been very busy over there. A lot of fingerprinting, a lot of training, a lot of newcomers each Wednesday. Sharon Duran, Karen Peak have been doing a great job running that. And that doesn't even account for all the various administrative appointments that you guys have done over the last several months. I can tell you that right now they are over there doing some of the level 2 participants, and all of the new hires that have never been calibrated through the evaluation system are going through their third of 3 long days this week over there in the dining room right now, getting that done. So a lot of things going on. Still some work to be done, especially in the area of some of the ESE critical positions. There are some vacancies out there, instructionally speaking, but there are some other things that we are considering, some creative recruitment methods. We have a couple of very, very critical positions that are out there that we're not receiving applicants for, so we're going through Indeed and some of the nationwide hiring searches to kind of get outside the box with finding some of these very, very critical positions. So that's where we are right now.
So I have one question and one comment.
Sure.
So one of those 62 instructional positions remaining, are they mostly elementary, or would you say they're mostly secondary?
I would say that they were, I don't have that exact information, but nothing jumped off at me in terms of data as an anomaly one way or another. I can tell you that I did break down the ESE instructional, of those 62, 17 of them are ESE instructional positions of some sort. So that's the one anomaly that jumped out, but I couldn't really I can't speak with any degree of confidence as to that breakdown, but I can certainly find that out for you.
And then a comment to send a kudo out to our partners at Northwest Florida State. They are aware of the need, not just in our county, but in our local 3-county area for more instructors. So they are working on a new program that would potentially help provide us with more teacher candidates. So I think that we need to give the good people out there kudos, because they have recognized the shortage and trying to reach out and help us.
Excellent. We can do that.
Very
I can
good.
give you the name afterwards.
Okay, thank you.
All right, very good. Thank you, Dr. Kelly, Dr. Hill. All right, so that takes us now to Section 15, School Board Members' Announcements and Requests for Information. So, Mr. Destin, sir, do you have anything?
I don't think I have anything
Okay,
this
very
morning.
good. Mr. Bryant?
I just had one, and Mr. Chambers alluded to Dr. Willis Doxey that's out there, right? If I said it backwards. So as y'all know, she's one of our newest professionals out there that are helping. I happened to be at Richburg the other day when her and Miss Summer were out there. But I thought it was a testament that it's not that you're not pregnant, but you're very close to having this baby 2 weeks away. But to see her energy and her enthusiasm in her position, I think is going to be a plus for the school district. So, you know, and I'm glad that you're out here so we can recognize you today. So thank you for all that you do. And also to our custodial staffs that are out there. All the schools that I visited in my district last week, you can't step on certain parts of the floor because you don't know if they're actually wet, or they're like, you know, because they're that shiny right now, and they're really working hard. And also all the projects that are going on throughout the district, all of our support people in maintenance across the board are trying to get the schools ready. So it's an exciting time. But, you know, these are the people behind the scenes that you don't hear about too much until something breaks or something, then you hear about it. But they're really working hard to get the schools in line. So I wanted to say thank you to all the support people and the administration and staff that are at the schools 12 months a year preparing for another exciting school year. So thank you to them.
Thank you, Mr. Bryant. Dr. Kelly?
Well, I will just tag on to that the schools that I've talked to or visited, that not only the custodial staff are busy, but the secretarial staffs and guidance counselors are out there already looking to see what students they have and what the backgrounds are so that they can be prepared and help their teachers be prepared when they return. So kudos to them. And just if you're not aware of this program, the Distinguished Young Women Program, that is something you should know that just concluded this year. And I think the young lady who won this year was from Choctaw, but a close second was from Niceville, Katie Lightfoot, who we all know that name because she has swept many women's athletics this year. So kudos to those young ladies. If you don't know, it's not just the young women in our area who have the highest academic standards, but also high community involvement, exceptional talent, exceptional interview abilities, and they do this for a duration of several weeks. So it's almost an unending competition for a season in their lives. So congratulations to those young women from Okaloosa County.
Thank you, Dr. Kelly. Ms. Van Jay.
Yeah, I want to mention something that's not directly school-related, but I want to actually shout out to our County Commissioner, Carolyn Ketchel. She started an initiative many months ago to add a Women's Veterans Memorial or Monument out on Okaloosa Island. And Dr. Kelly and I were asked to make a little statement in support of her, which we did. And we went to the commission meeting the other day, and that was voted in. And I think this is going to be a great project for our area. And it came from the Tourist Development Commission. And I just, I admire Commissioner Ketchel, all the commissioners, but she took on this initiative and wanted to shout out to her. And also, it seems like the retail outlets let us know when it's going time back to school, because they already have supplies going. They're already starting with that. But I want to remind the public of the sales tax holiday coming up August 2nd through 6th. That's a good time to pick up those needed items. And almost every place, including, of course, all the locations of Walmart, they have ways that you can donate supplies to those students who may not be able to purchase those supplies. So those out there that could maybe give a little bit to those that don't have it, I hope they will do that and pick it up on that week and save yourself some sales tax money. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Van Jay. All right, so that takes us down to the next section there, and that will be public comment. And then we do have a public hearing, 17.1, public hearing for the adoption of elementary and secondary Code of Student Conduct for the 2019-2020 school year, presented by Mr. Brian Humphrey, Specialist Student Services, and recommended by the superintendent for approval. And that gets us to adjournment. Anything else, Mr. Attorney, for the workshop? Superintendent, you're all good?
Yes, sir.
All right, colleagues, you're all good here, staff? This meeting is adjourned.
Short recess.